What up, what up, what up? Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. And we're joined by world-renowned promoter, Lou Dibella. How are you, man? Thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you guys.
Oh, beautiful
Be betting my
lighting.
house. I wouldn't be betting my house on Davis.
At a minus 195, Lou?
I think I got to be honest. That's exactly where it should be. I actually think that's like those are the right odds.
All right, well let's start because
But I'll tell you what. I'll tell you the bet I like in that fight. And I don't even know the odds, but that fight won't go the distance.
check this. I'm sure they don't have odds.
No,
for
they
that
don't
yet.
have prop bets just yet. But Lou, since you were listening, do you think that if Ryan does upset the apple card, he can receive as much love and popularity and get as big as Andy did off the win of AJ?
Oh yeah, bigger.
That's what I tried to argue with my co-host. He said he doesn't believe it can happen.
Hell no.
He says he doesn't see the president of Mexico inviting Ryan to meet him.
I don't give a shit about the president of Mexico. How about like half the young girls in America? How about like, you know,
He has that already, though.
He has the crossover potential in a lot of ways that Davis has star power. Ryan has a different kind of star power. And if Ryan can look, in my mind, the way Ryan's going to win is he's got to hurt Davis and win in resounding fashion. He's going to be huge. And if Davis beats him, he's going to be bigger. It's a fight that's going to make a bigger star. And I think that whoever hurts the other guy first likely wins.
Lou, you've been in the business a lot of years. I have to ask. I was extremely critical, especially when he fought your guy Emmanuel to go. Like, that was a 12-round fight where Ryan didn't even attempt to cut off the ring. Like, it was just ugly to watch. That doesn't...
It was an ugly fight, but he'd also been off for a while. I'm not making excuses, but he's big and he can punch and he's skilled. And as good as I think Davis is, and I think Davis is really good at a number of his fights, you'll remember, I saw him up close. He can he's also fought a lot of smaller guys, and Ryan's a bigger guy for the weight and a longer guy. And Ryan can crack. And anybody who's bigger than you that can crack poses danger. So, like, I think it's a really dangerous fight for both guys. I'd probably, like, legitimately, Davis should be the favorite. I think he's a little bit more seasoned, a little bit more experienced, and probably at this moment in time, a little bit boxer. But, you know, he doesn't throw a boatload of punches, and he's never been hit by a guy bigger than he is and cracked. And I think it's a really, really interesting fight. And I also, like, I'm a Ryan Garcia fan from the standpoint of seeing how much is marketable and promotable with him if he can win this kind of fight. And if he can win this kind of fight, I think the sky's the limit for how big he can be. I think he could be at least as big as Davis is.
Have you ever seen a Mario Barrios fight, Lou, in person? Because Mario's big as fuck.
Mario got hit by everything. And you know, look, I'm not telling you, it doesn't really matter what you and I think about who's going to win the fight. Like, this is a fight that probably will be explosive, and it's a fight that's going to create a superstar. I think the win, and by the way, I'm not counting on anything. I think the fact that Ryan's not taking an interim fight is probably a good thing. I believe Davis is going to win the interim fight he's taking. And then let's see after that fight if this fight is 100% made. But if this fight is 100% made, it's definitely a real good fight for boxing because it's the kind of fight that's going to produce a star, and God knows we need more stars.
Lou,
because so many of the motherfuckers being overpaid in our business who think they're stars don't mean shit.
Lou, this is an opinion I had. I think that this fight can be such a big fight that it makes the debut at Allegiant Stadium, the Raider Stadium here in Las Vegas. I know you know a thing or two about big events. We haven't had either guy actually tank fought in the stadium during the pandemic, but nonetheless, do you think that we can see this fight? Is it to that level, in your opinion?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it also depends on when it takes place and how it's priced. I think it's of a level that would sell MGM or a convention center or an indoor arena.
Okay.
Could it sell? It depends how it's priced. I think, look, it's a very attractive site fight, and it's a very attractive. It's a fight card that will, because of its main event, will transcend the hardcore fans. Because, look at all these mediocre pay-per-views that are being done. None of them are doing overs and buys, and none of them really should. This is going to go to another level. Now, is it going to go to a million buy level or a 750,000? No, I don't think so. But I think it's a big fight, and I think it'll do well at a site. I'm not so sure if you're better off going to him and selling half of it, or you're better off going to an arena and have out. And my gut probably tells me as a promoter, the latter is probably better for the sport. I don't think this is quite a stadium show. I think it's more a very hot ticket in an arena.
So, Lou, obviously, I want to turn into you as a international boxing Hall of Fame inducted, promoter. You've worked with HBO. Like Danny said, you've been around this sport for some time. I just recently read a quote where it sounds like your love for the sport has changed. So I just wanted to, ask you, has it? And have you grown bitter with boxing? Do you love it the same? And if not, what has changed for you?
Bitter? No. I could see how people get bitter, but I'm not bitter about anything. I'm disappointed in some ways. I don't think we're what we should or could be. I think our fans are dwindling in number in terms of our hardcore. And most importantly, I think we are losing casuals where they don't come back that many times a year because we don't give them reason to. And my love's not the same. I'm not as interested. There are too many fights where I don't think the outcome's in doubt, or I don't give a fuck about the guy fighting. Because some guy tells you he's a superstar doesn't mean he is. If you're not fighting the best guys to prove that you're the best, and you're not really, and most of the public doesn't know who you are, you're not the star you think you are. And at the moment, at this point in my life, after 33 years in this business, I'm not that excited by your average wrestling show. I'd rather go to a club show that's well matched than see an ace-hitter fighting someone with zero chance, and then screaming about how wonderful he is because he beat an overmatched opponent. I'm not, I'm aggravated right now with Terrence and Errol. And who's to blame doesn't even concern me. I don't give a fuck. I just care that that's really the only fight I've wanted to see in that division for a while in a big way, and it's still not happening. And by the way, ultimately, if these fighters really believe they're their own men, they're their own boss, they're their own promoter, make it happen. Make it happen. Because if you guys can't make it happen, then neither can the rest of us.
You spoke.
So, I'm not bitter at all, but I definitely think that I get asked all the time by people like in my neighborhood or people I know from the New York City area who know I'm a promoter, know I'm in boxing for years. I mean, it's weird, but now, first they want to talk about social influencers and Jake Paul, which I don't really want to talk about. and then the second question is always the same question, which is like, well, you think MMA has hurt you guys? And the reality is, I don't buy that for 1 second. MMA we've hurt ourselves. Like we have no governance. We have no authority. The ratings and the ratings organizations, as much as I love some of them and the people in them, they're a joke. There is no proper administration. A guy doesn't get into the ratings now by merit. A guy gets into the ratings or moves up the ratings by, do they need him rated so we can get a big fight? We don't see enough fights with the outcome truly in doubt. And I'm not interested as a long-term fan. If I don't think there's a doubt, I'm unlikely to watch it, right? And if I don't, and it used to be also where there were new fighters. They would fight regularly. You'd see a guy come back and fight 3 times, 4 times a year, and the next year the fighter would fight better guys, and you get interested in his career. You'd want to follow his career. Fighters fight once a year, twice a year, and for the most part, they're not fighting 50-50 fights. They're waiting for a big fight that may never happen. And is that affecting my love? Yeah, of course it is. And it's more important than my love. It's affecting the love of fans. Now, you guys make a living doing this shit. Like, you work in it, and it's part of what you do and who you are. But there's a very small group of us that make a living doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And we tend to live in our own little fucking bubble, not realizing most people don't give a shit anymore. And the fact that most people don't give a shit anymore is on us as a sport, as an industry. We owe it to make more people care. And the only way that's going to happen is by offering better product with regularity, which we're not doing often enough.
But Lou, how do we do that? Like, you spoke about fights not being 50-50. So this is like a two-parter here. For Lou Dibella, the promoter, when do you take the gloves off, the kid gloves off your fighter, and now he's in a 50-50 fight? Because that's traditionally how boxing is. Boxing is the promoter puts him in there with a guy that he's going to beat to build him up, build his confidence, develop him.
Yeah, but dude, this blows my. I don't, like, again, I only have 20 minutes on the phone when you get back to work in about 15 minutes. So I can't go through this, but we have the same conversation almost every time I'm on, whether it's a year ago or 2 years ago or 6 months ago. It is, you're ignoring the fucking nature of the beast and how the sport works right now. The reason Matchroom and Eddie Hearn make money is because DAZN pays a lot of money. And Al has had the ability to be the leading promoter or manager, whatever the fuck you want to call him. Let's just say promoter, but it doesn't matter. On Showtime and Fox, and Frank has an exclusive with ESPN, but it's ESPN, DAZN, and those platforms that are paying the money, and it's those couple of promoters that have output dealing what makes sense for them to put on television, and networks don't want to build the fighters so they can go fight someplace else, and it's just harder to make big fights, and there isn't a lot of incentive in it. And fighters have been spoiled by too much of other people's money. These platforms like DAZN, when they first got in, spending crazy money. And then look at all these new players. Triller comes in, until they blow their brains out, they pay too much money. And then some guy comes and gets Terrence Crawford to agree to do a fight, and he blows his brains out, and he pays too much money. And some promoter from California has some wealthy guys behind him, and he wins the fucking purse bid, % more than anyone with a brain would have paid, and gets the rights to Prograis. And even though he's well-intentioned and he goes through with the fight and he pays everybody, he blows his fucking brains out. But the fighters get overpaid. So you have all these fighters overpaid that then don't want to fight the biggest and best fights for fair wage. They want to be overpaid. But guess what? The people with the money, and including, once you get to a pay-per-view level, including the DAZNs and the ESPNs and the Foxes and the Al Haymans and the Matchrooms and the Arams, don't want to blow their fucking brains out economically either. So you get the fighter, the A-side fighter, to take less. Why is he taking less? Because he can't lose. Why can't he lose? Because it's not a real fucking fight. Why can't lose?
Lou, so is anybody doing it right?
If all you motherfuckers, stop it. If all you motherfuckers want to buy tickets or want to go to see you, but that's why we're not where we were 25, 30, 40 years ago. Because back then you actually saw competitive fights with clarity. Not that there weren't stinkers, not weren't appearance fights. Every great champion, didn't want to take a break in between really hard fights to fight one that might be easier. They did. But now it's fewer and far between. And now it used to be, at least when you said pay-per-view fight, 25 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, but things were starting to fade then already. But even then, you sort of knew what it meant when someone said a pay-per-view fight, right? What's a pay-per-view fight now? I don't know. Because a lot of them are completely non-competitive. A lot of them I wouldn't even think about fucking buying. A lot of them, most of you guys are stealing. Why are you stealing? You want to see them, but you don't want to pay for them. And what's the pay-per-view fight even mean anymore? It just means that someone's not willing to pay enough, put it on regular over, some kind of linear television or even pay cable. That the only way it's going to get made is pay-per-view dollars. And by the way, a lot of the fights now happen on pay-per-view because the guys that control the platforms understand that the only way to meet the fighter's expectations is to say to the fighter, if you think you're that fucking big, okay, we'll put it on pay-per-view and you'll get most of the money generate. And if you don't generate it, you don't get it. And by the way, that's legitimate. I would do that as a promoter. If a fighter's saying to me, I'm a superstar and I'm going to do buys, okay, you're going to do 1 million buys? Well, you work on that, then work on the upside, right? If you're really going to do 1 million buys, work on the upside.
So basically, you're saying you agree with the way that Al Heyman went about the contract for Earl and Crawford?
No, because I wasn't fucking there. And I know Al better than almost everybody else, and I'm not opining on anything other than the fact that Al's a really smart guy, and at this point in Al's career and this point of PBC, interested in doing something really from a business perspective. That's why is he not doing that? He's a very smart guy. And by the way, fighters don't deserve to earn more than they generate. They don't. If you can't sell tickets into an arena, then you shouldn't ask so many questions about what you're getting paid. If your pay-per-view numbers, Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia have more of a right to argue about what their purses are than guys that can't generate any money. Why did Kambosos and Haney get well paid in Australia? The money was there because they generated it. Why is George Kambosos? He's lost those 2 fights to Haney, and why did he do so well over his last 3 fights? Because generate money. And by the way, people in America have to understand, particularly right now, it's a global sport, and there are other markets, frankly, that are stronger than ours. But if a fighter is capable of generating money, if a fighter really has a following, he deserves to make more. And if he doesn't, he can't. And if his expectation is, well, if you want me to take some risk in order to get, to get paid, I don't really risk unless you're over me, then it makes some sense that fighters are going to fight less frequently. Because no one in this marketplace, maybe a platform like a Dazn, is willing to blow their brains out, but their promoter, Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, they're not willing to blow their brains out. And ESPN right now, they really value boxing as programming, but they don't value boxing like they value league sports. They don't value boxing like they value UFC because it doesn't do the same kind of results. They like the sport for the money they're paying for it, but none of them are interested in bankrolling a pay-per-view fight and losing money because Terrence Crawford or an Errol Spence or a Tyson Fury or someone else thinks that they're worth more than they are. And why do you think people are running to the Middle East and insane, crazy money from people that don't care about whether they make it or lose it? Because that's how you meet the expectations of the athlete. Because if anyone thinks that Usyk and Fury is a big event in Saudi Arabia or Dubai, the way it could be a huge event in Las Vegas or Great Britain, you're wrong.
So I'm going to get to these people's questions because I know you're pressed for time. I got Ruin a 504 who says, how long will you continue to work with Probellum?
Right now I only work with Probellum on a few fighters, and I'll continue to work with Probellum as long as it makes sense. But right now I have a contract for a few fighters, and I'll continue to work with them until those contracts run out.
James Valdez, San Antonio, Texas says, I was rooting for Kambosos when he went into that Tio fight. Not just because he was the underdog, but mainly because he was under your banner and I wanted you to get the win. I've always liked the way you conducted yourself. No question, just wanted to say salute to you.
It's very nice. Thank you. And look, right now particularly, and not just for myself, because you got to remember the majority of promoters in the Northern Hemisphere don't have exclusive contracts. And the majority of promoters, entire world of boxing, don't have exclusive contracts and deals. There's a handful that do. And it's very, very difficult in the absence of that big win out of nowhere every so often. It's just a business. People don't understand that developing fighters, for the most part, I'm not making money at all. Getting a young fighter, right now, the majority of fights aren't televised. I mean, I pay to produce Broadway boxing and put it on television. I'm not getting paid. So the exposure that my fighters are getting, it's money I'm investing, not money I'm making. And it's a very, very high risk business as a promoter when you develop fighters, because out of all the fighters you work on, the number that actually become stars or win a life-changing fight is a handful. So part of it is you need to get lucky now and then. So nice to have somebody happy that I had. And then I'm grateful to George Kambosos too for that performance, for what it was able to do for so many of our lives last year. I mean, those two events in Australia were big, big events, and they were life-changing and company-changing events for a lot of people.
Absolutely. I got Brandon in Houston and says, thanks for coming on, Lou. I have long said that fighters who do not go through with mandated fights for non-injury related reasons should be dropped from the top 15 of that sanctioning body and dropped from any other sanctioning body they were in. The bodies do not rank champions or other bodies, of other bodies. So that proves that they can all work together in terms of rankings. As a manager promoter in boxing, can you tell me why that would not be good for the sport?
Look, the fact that the ratings don't look the same in all the organizations, the fact that there's so many differences, and the fact that so many inept fighters that fight nobody are ranked. The ratings are politicized. The ratings aren't fair. They're not fair in any of the organizations. If you turn down a mandatory, you should come out of the ratings. If you've lost your last fight and you've been inactive, you shouldn't move from out of the ratings to no, because somebody with money is going to put you in a big fight. But that happens every month. I mean, there's a dude, and I don't know, I think his name is Boog. I follow him on Twitter, and he pays a lot of attention to the rankings, and he always correctly theorizes who's going to get a big fight because of where they move into the rankings. And he's generally right. There are guys that can't stand up that are rated. And also a lot of politics, and a country will have a fighter. Guys will go to Mexico and fight on shows against horrendous opposition where basically is as close to a fixed fight as you can get, and win 5 fights in a row. And that's justification for charging up the ratings. There are so many. There's a guy, Tim Boxeo. He follows all the local club shows worldwide. Mm-hmm. Follow his Twitter feed, and you'll get a kick out of the jokes, the setups, the dives, the stuff that goes on worldwide that justifies people being in the ratings. Not to mention, the overt corruption that's involved in some of the ratings. So, I mean, dude, I don't pay fucking credence to the ratings. They're full of shit. And honestly, trying to sit there and figure out how to fix them, I spent a lot trying to do that. I'm past that. Because right now, man, I don't like there's nothing fair or just about most of the ratings. And that's another reason you see so few. Mandatory should mean a guy that's earned the right to be there, that's perceived as being able to give the champion a tough contest. Mandatories are no hope. It just tells you everything you need to know about the state of our ratings in boxing.
How much time we got, Lou?
I mean, I'll go a few more minutes, guys.
All right. So I'm gonna skip David and come back just in case we run out of time. I wanted to bring up obviously Stephanie McMahon of the WWE publicly coming out and saying that they wanted to look into making some acquisitions in boxing. How'd you receive that, and have you reached out?
No, I had a and I have a very good marketing apparatus, and I think they see potential in a business that could be rolled up, probably relative. I mean, their company's worth the whole publicly traded. Look at that was paid for UFC when UFC got purchased. It's billions of dollars. You could wrap up the entire industry of boxing or the majority of the power structure for a fraction of what it would cost to wrap up another sport. Also, remember the guy that's now running with Stephanie and her husband, a Triple H, that's running WWE, is the same guy that made the deal for Arum with ESPN, Nick Khan.
Correct.
Who was a huge CAA agent. So I'm sure Nick, who's a very smart guy, there's potential opportunities in boxing if you were to wrap up the sport and really, it's no secret that Heyman's out there and looking to raise money on occasion. It's no secret that Top Rank has been for sale. Secret that Eddie was looking to sell a portion of his economic interest in Matchroom to venture capitalists. I mean, all this stuff's not a secret. And if you're out there and you're thinking to yourself, you know what, like maybe I could wrap up boxing the way I wrapped up UFC. Now, UFC has competition with Bellator and PFL. The reality is they have an incredibly strong hold on that industry. And if someone went out and took out PBC and Matchroom and Top Rank right now, and those television deals that those three organizations had were able to maintain themselves, because I don't know how much time, for example, ESPN and Top Rank are bound together. I don't know how long Al's deals are. I don't know how long Eddie's deal with Dazn goes. But if those television deals come with the picture and someone can wrap up those entities and then go out and wrap up a number of the other smaller companies, and for a fraction of what it would take to purchase a UFC or a WWE can wrap up boxing, that's pretty powerful to put into a portfolio that already includes WWE. And WWE also understands sports entertainment, and boxing would be a lot better off if we stood that we're basically sports entertainment also.
That being said, Lou, last time me and my co-host checked, they had over 92 million subscribers on their YouTube channel. Now that you know that, would it make more sense to try and make a phone call since you're paying television to put your shows on, do you feel you'll get a more residual effect from putting them straight to their YouTube channel?
Whose YouTube channel?
WWE.
WWE is not going to lend their brand to something
you're paying.
Unless they. No, but my point being that you're saying to pay them to put it on YouTube.
I mean, because you're paying to put them on TV. I mean, maybe they look at it as licensing, possibly. I know I'm fishing here, but I'm optimistic. Ness, I need this sport to grow.
Ness.
I hear it in your voice where you're coming.
Vince McMahon and the McMahon families had a hold on that company for a long time. They brought in a guy who was a top agent and a TV guy to run it, to help them run it. They're not looking to televise our programming. They're not looking for Lou Dibella's product or Eddie Hearn's product or Bob Arum's product. I would guess the same way that UFC took a look at boxing. UFC actually considered at one point, it was out there buying Top Rank. UFC was considering making major plays into the sport, and UFC came to a point where they said, I don't think it's worth our aggravation right now. We want to pay attention to our mothership. And if anything, they've moved away from that thought process. If WWE, it's not going to be in some small way, and they're not going to take phone calls about putting Broadway boxing on their YouTube channel. If they're going to get into it, it's going to be because they see an opportunity to create something that is bigger than it presently is right now by bringing up the assets that are out there, by investing in the sport and putting it under WWE, some kind of WWE control. And if you listen to what Stephanie said and what talked about her interview afterward, it was more like exploratory kind of conversation than it was they have any big plan. But like I said earlier, I could see Nick Khan exploring something in that area. They're a publicly traded company. They have their own issues. They need to show areas where potentially they could grow. If someone actually effectively could wrap up boxing and try to. Eddie Hearn came to America with this giant bankroll and thought he was going to take over our industry. And he's back in England, and say what you will, at least with respect to America, he's back with his tail between his legs a little bit. We easy to come into this country and just take over our sport.
What's that?
But somebody, what? But
what's
somebody
that number?
would truly. That it would, I think it would take to
wrap up everybody, to wrap up Heyman, Bob, Eddie, all the small players too, because if you leave small players, they turn to big players.
Virtually nothing compared to big time sports. $500 million, 500 million, you could probably wrap up this sport and have be by far the force on the planet in boxing. $500 million.
And by that,
but it has to be done with an understanding of things. It's not. See, the reason you want to wrap it up is you want to make sure UFC's product on a show-by-show basis is better than boxing's product on a show-by-show basis. Why? Because they force the best to fight the best. They force fights that people care about. And in our industry, that doesn't happen so much. Why? Because we're Dodge City. It's every man for himself, or every platform for himself. There's no central authority. You know, by the way, a sport that desperately needs it, that's way smaller than most of its competition, we don't need 4 sanctioning bodies with 4 separate ratings and 4 separate champions. You know, you're way better off with 1.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Lou, I wanted to ask, we've seen boxers kind of have that crossover with the WWE, WWF. Floyd did it back in the day. We've seen Tyson Fury recently do it. Logan Paul, if you will. Ali back in the day. What boxers currently fighting do you think can have that crossover and get that exposure from WWE?
More than you could name. There are a lot of them that have personalities. A lot of the women in the sport have personalities and brands. A lot of the men do, and you never talk to them, and no one ever interviews them. Here's the reality. WWE's not going to give a fuck about any of them. The reason they cared about his brother is because they were stars before they came into WWE. I mean, Logan Paul and Jake Paul had gazillion followers and YouTube followers and all sorts of people that cared about them, and they took that brand. Jake took it into boxing. Logan's taking it into WWE. Probably at some point Jake will follow. WWE is going to be interested in people that are marketable, that have star power, that are celebrities. Most fighters aren't celebrities. And the funny part is, a lot of our fighters who think they are walk down Times Square and no one would know who the fuck they were.
Lou, so recently you signed Lucas Brown, and you have a handful of heavyweights. I know you don't have a network deal. Is that the reason that those heavyweights haven't fought each other? And I'm speaking most specifically, obviously, your gold medalist. Like, he needs some of those guys on your roster to put his name out there.
Well, I'm signing more heavyweights because there's a lack of professional heavyweights. And frankly, heavyweights need fights and they need to be developed. And the right now, the platforms that are giving their monies to their exclusive promoters, those guys aren't really developing opponents. They're servicing the needs with the budget they have of their stars. And, you know, heavyweight division right now, there's literally nobody for people to fight. How do you develop a young heavyweight? He's not getting developed fighting a guy that shouldn't be even in the ring because he's been knocked out 10 times out of his last 15. You know? And look, I mean, even Rydell Booker, I put Rydell Booker on a card. He's a professional heavyweight. Sean, I paid Rydell really fair wage to fight Shaw in an 8-round fight. He made Shaw work, and he went 8 rounds. His next fight, he knocked out an undefeated German contender in a fight where he was supposed to be there. I mean, like, guys like Booker, guys that can go out there and beat people. I got confused. The guy that I mentioned and knocked out the German was Curtis Harper, who I just used for Jalal.
Christian Thun.
He also beat Christian Thun in Florida.
Right. And that those kind of fights create opposition for guys who need professional opposition. But a fighter that's lost 10 in a row or 15 in a row, he doesn't prove anything. And a guy whose record is 15-0 because he's beaten 15 guys who were literally no hopers. I mean, I don't want to pick on Chris Lovejoy, but all you had to do was look at Chris Lovejoy's record and know he was going to have a problem with the real guy he fought. And what happened? He did. I've said before, I can get a ham to 15-0. Building a ham sandwich to a 15-0 record does nothing to help the sport of boxing. We need to create contenders. We need to create opponents. We need to create, and in a heavyweight division that now has some stars, I'm seeing an opportunity in signing guys who are legitimate professional heavyweights because there are so few of them.
So speaking of developing, obviously you've been doing that with Stephen Big Shot Shaw. I've been knowing him.
I mean, Jalalev is willing to fight anybody. We reached out and offered fights for good money, and fighters don't want to fight Jalalev unless it's a heavyweight title. I mean, he's a 6'8" animal who has like concussive power and can move, and like unless you're getting paid a lot of money, guys don't want to fight that kind of guy. It's not so easy to develop a young fighter. It's very, very expensive. But if you want to develop a good fighter, you need to make that kind of investment. Now, there's an advantage to Eddie and to Aram and to Al because they have big bankrolls. But frankly, they're using their bankrolls for their A-sides more than they're using their bankrolls to build opponents and develop big fights. And that's one of the reasons why we don't have the same overall quality of boxing on a regular basis as we used to. That's not to say it sucks all the time. It doesn't. If it sucked all the time, I wouldn't be doing it, wouldn't be talking about it. But we're not putting our best foot forward often enough. We're not creating competitive matchups often enough. And we certainly aren't energizing and invigorating our fans often enough. And if I have any wish for all of us in 2023, is that it's a more competitive, star-studded year than we had in 2022. Because, like, I don't care what people say, we had some good fights, but unless you're the hardcore fan, we didn't satisfy the interests of our overall wider fan base, and we certainly did very little to attract casual fans in 2022.
So, Lou, when it comes to Jalalev, what's the plan? Oh, we lost him?
I'm here.
Yeah, Lou,
Hello,
so I
I'm
was
here.
just asking, what's the plan with Jalalev? Because he's not ranked, and I know you said you don't play the Saints.
No, he's right. No, he's
Which
right.
organization?
He's like WBC number 16 right now.
Yeah,
And
okay.
that's about where he should be. He shouldn't be able to fight for a world title yet, but he's a 2 away from that.
So a spot behind Big Baby?
He's around there. Yes,
yeah, but he's a gold medalist.
Or spot.
He's a gold medalist. I mean, if you would have played the rankings like you said, he would be like,
dude, there is no rankings. Ness, wake up, man. The rankings are about money. How their money? 3% of sanctioning fees, 3% of purses, and promoter sanctioning fees.
Yeah, but
what's
forces
that based
the
on?
fight,
What's
though,
paid for?
Lou.
Stop. No, man, no, it doesn't. Because unless you're bribing them, it's about how much money you legitimately bring to them. And if Top Rank has an exclusive with ESPN, the ESPN budget, sanctioning organizations understand they have to serve the interests of Top Rank.
Mm-hmm.
The sanctioning organizations understand they have to serve the interest of Matchroom because Matchroom owns money, and PBC because it's Showtime's money. And for the rest of us, we'll pay our sanctioning fees for the fights we can make. But if the television money's not there for the fight, the sanctioning fee's not there for the fight. Think they give a fuck about who's really the best guy, or you think they give a fuck about their company making money?
I think you're right. They care about their company making money, but when fights are mandated, it forces the conversation of that fight.
But who decides if the fight's mandated? And by the way, you could be mandated and sit there as the mandatory for 3 years, or you could be mandated and one
This shit don't
and
happen.
Eddie or Bob makes no. You could be mandated, sit there forever, or you could be mandated and told you're going to get stripped if you don't fight the guy next, and that's all about the money.
Absolutely, but it still gets you fights. Like Lubin had how
But
many?
what's your fucking point, Ness?
My point is, I want
$1 million,
Janilov to get a real fucking fight versus real fighters that people care about.
Okay.
And if you played the sanctioning bodies, he'd be higher ranked. Look at this guy. You wait a minute. I was just at the convention. This fucking guy, number 8, Zan Kugabuski, he fought a dude that was overweight. That Don Majeski is arguing that he should not be ranked. He got ranked over Odawa Valine, who beat Dominic Brazil.
What? Okay. Yeah.
So now he's in. He's.
Do you know what's going on behind the scenes and how he got ranked?
What do you mean?
Do you know what's going on? I mean what I say. Do you know how guys get ranked? Do you know how the politics of these organizations and stuff? You don't.
I don't.
And the real. Well, that's the bottom line. If you think anything is fair, it's not.
But it don't have to be fair. You got to play the game, though.
No, I ain't playing the game. I'm not bribing people. I'm not whining and dining people I don't fucking like. I'm not kissing the ass of people I think are criminals. I'm not doing that shit. And if that and by the way, I wouldn't have to do that shit if I had a big enough budget behind me, because they would understand that if why is Derek Chisora fighting time after time after time, and he'll probably fight until he's brain dead? Well, people in Britain will pay to watch him, and the networks in like Dazn will pay for his fights. And if that's then he's going to continue to get ranked no matter how many times he loses, no matter how much he's in danger.
Yeah, but what's the key reason?
Because it's money. Because he generates money.
Exactly. He's got a fan base. He sells tickets and pay-per-views. That's always going to be what moves the needle.
No, what moves the needle is the budget. If I could go in and I had a DAZN budget to say I'll pay $1 million for the next Jalala fight, including I'll overpay the opponent by $200,000 to get him in the ring, then I can play with the rankings because I have funny money to deliver to the people that make and determine the rankings. I don't have that funny money to play with. So therefore, that's not happening. So I have to go the old-fashioned way, make the best fights I can make and move him up the ratings in a more deliberate and slower manner. I'm pretty good at that. That's how George Kambosos became a mandatory. That's, my fighters do get opportunities.
Stephen Big Shot Shaw. Stephen Big Shot Shaw. You just put him in position. I want to double back to him because he is fighting Vito Guida. Say his name.
Vito?
Guianella.
He's fighting
Villanella.
Guido Vianelli.
That one.
Guido Vianelli.
Guido.
He's Italian guy on
Vianelli.
ESPN. We got him into that position. Now he's got to win that fight. He wins that fight. He's won on ESPN in a big position. He'll be moved into world ratings coming out of that fight.
Now
And
here's
then
the double question.
As he starts continuing to rise and Jared Anderson continues to rise, if they establish themselves as the two American guys, they're likely to meet at some point next year, later in the year. So we have to build bigger fights, but it's harder. It's a little bit harder for me, and it takes a lot more work because I don't have an exclusive deal with a platform. I'm not crying about that. It is what it is.
Is Shaw more developed than Guido in your opinion?
Yes. He's fought way better guys. He's beaten better guys. He's been more tested. He's seen different looks. Look at Shaw's record. He's fought a lot of guys with winning records. He's more prepared for that moment. Absolutely more that moment than Guido is. Doesn't mean it's not a tough fight. It is. It's a good fight. So is the Jagba fight with Oscar Rivas. That's the headliner on that ESPN show in January. They're good competitive heavyweight fights. That's exactly, by the way, the kind of show we need to see more of, because the winner of Effie and Rivas moves on to a bigger fight. The winner of Guido and Shaw moves on to a bigger fight. I think Shaw's going to win. I wouldn't have invested all the money I have in him over the years if I didn't think he was that kind of guy. But we need those kind of fights. Do you remember all those when you were kids? Because I know you guys watch this shit, like the Nights of Young Heavyweights that would be on HBO, and going back years, it would be, and even Cedric Kushner would do these shows, and Don King would do shows where you would have like up and coming heavyweights fighting one another. And if it was a great fight, it didn't really matter if a guy lost because if a heavyweight loses and he loses well, he's still a top heavyweight. And we need to have more of those kind of fights to create narratives in the heavyweight division, because the heavyweight division is still the glamour division.
Lou, and I gotta be nosy here, because last time we had you on, you made it clear that you did not want to give up your fighters to any other promoter. But Shaw getting this opportunity has me feeling like maybe he's being co-promoted now.
No, he's been co-promoted his last couple of fights. Look, if it's fair, I'm happy to co-promote and do a deal. And look, sometimes you have to. Now, by the way, there are people out there, I don't try to do that kind of shit with anymore, because they don't know how to be partners with other people. But if I'm offered a situation that's good for my fighter and it opens up a platform for him and an opportunity, I'll do it. But as I've proven with my own money time after time too, I'll make sure my fighters keep fighting and they're busy, and that I manipulate them and get them to the right situation, even if I have to invest my own money. And there aren't a lot of people doing that right now. And by the way, I don't blame people. It's very expensive to do that. It's a high risk. Look, I'll be honest with you guys. I enjoy the baseball part of my life now probably more than I do the boxing part, because I love baseball like I love boxing, but my businesses make more sense than my boxing business does, because the entire industry doesn't make economic sense. And by the way, if Eddie can sit there and contradict me, tell me I'm a bitter old guy and everything makes sense and look how well I'm doing. Well, if all your eggs are in a DAZN basket and you're making a shitload of money, but DAZN's losing money, there's something wrong with that whole picture. Now, God bless you that you're making money. God bless you, and Matchroom's doing great. But your benefactor and the people that are paying your bills aren't making money. That's a problem, and it's a problem where fighters are paid so much that the guys that have the exclusive deals and have the platforms still are releasing undefeated fighters, are cutting ties with pound for pound fighters because their expectations are too great. The whole way our business works on the upper levels is irrational. And that's one of the reasons why you see the Trillers pop in and become a force. You see, what's it called? BLK Prime?
Yeah.
Black Prime, or whatever they call themselves, come in and, and do their thing. You see people running in, and often those people get out almost as quickly as they got in, because they blow their brains out for tens of millions of dollars. And no one turns their money down when they're in the industry. Having a business structure for an industry that's as irrational as ours is does lend itself to the sport being what the sport can be. I said in my Hall of Fame speech that I still believe that boxing is a sport of kings and queens when it's done the right way. I think a great night at the fight is better than anything else. I think a sensational, well-matched championship fight is like nothing else. But it's few and far between.
When's the last time we had that,
forward.
Lou?
You brought up Black Prime, Lou. They're using Christy Martin in Atlanta for that Broner card. What's your thoughts on,
I love Christy. She's a good woman, and she knows how to run an event. I mean, look, if their checks don't bounce and they pay the people they're supposed to pay, then I don't hate on any to this industry that's going to put money in good intentions. Look, I got to tell you, I'm not going to get into talking about the guy, but I had a long conversation before the Prograis fight with Cepeda, with the guy that bankrolled that fight, one of the partners in that fight, and he was a well-intentioned guy. And I think he now knows that it's not as easy to come into our industry and think you understand it, that taking chances in boxing can cost you millions of dollars really, really quickly. Part of the problem is everybody sees our sport so easy to enter and sees stupidity from a distance that they think they can come in and fix it. But coming in, if you think come in and fix something you know very little about, then you're being really naive. And I don't want to see anybody fail in boxing. But I want to see our sport be what it can be. And right now, it's a little bit of a hot mess.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. But Lou, we got.
But by the way, we're not going anywhere, Ness.
Nah,
We are eternal.
I hope
we're
not.
as eternal. We're as eternal as pornography is, because people will always fight for other people's entertainment. People will always fuck for other people's entertainment. There are things that are just innate in human beings: sex, violence, competition.
You're right.
Mano a mano, woman against heart over athletic ability. There are many attractive elements our sport from a human interest standpoint that we are never going to die. But doesn't mean it's not sad to me where we are now compared to where we were 30 years ago, because it is sad to me.
Two-parter. Does Franchon Cruz beat Hannah Gabriels, and does she fight Shadeja Green or win or lose that fight?
I don't know, but I'd love to see Franchon again. I love Franchon, and I think she's a real good fighter. I think Franchon and I think Hannah is a beast. I think Hannah there's no accident. If you look at the curve of girl that really gave her the hardest fight was Hannah Gabriels. Hannah Gabriels and Savannah Marshall second. But I think Hannah Gabriels and Franchon would be a fight of the year candidate. And I know Franchon too well to ever take her lightly, but I think that'd be a great fight, and I would probably bet on my own girl, but I think Franchon's a great champion, and that's a terrific fight. But and look, there's no reason why. Look at the women's game, by the way. They hesitate to fight each other virtually never. Like, it's so much easier to make the best woman fight the best woman because they don't have the attitude and the luxury having been pampered and overpaid and spoiled the way so many male fighters have had. And part of the reason why we don't see the mega fights happen with the frequency they should happen with is artificial expectations that need to be controlled.
Lou, is that a heavyweight fight for Franchon and Hannah at 176?
I mean, look, if I'm Franchon and I'm light and I have her belts, I probably would do it as go up and wait and fight for the undisputed heavyweight title. Try to make that fight happen. There's not a lot of female heavyweights, or really, if heavyweight technically in female boxing is an ounce above light heavyweight, right? So, to make I think Franchon and Hannah for the undisputed heavyweight belts. Franchon weight. It's a good economic move for her because she keeps her belts if she loses at the higher weight. I think that would be a way to entice that fight to happen. And I think that's a fight that would be a terrific fight for women's boxing.
Where are you looking to do that?
I don't know, but it's one of the things I got to reach out and talk to Franchon's people about. But I think and talk to Franchon about. But I think it's something that is certainly possible.
What?
And
Lou. I heard the fight's done.
Yeah.
What are we talking about here? I literally spoke to Hannah. She's saying it's done.
Well, then it'll be announced shortly, Ness.
Come on. Where, though?
Hey, that's what'll be announced shortly, I guess.
All right, you didn't answer the second part. Is Franchon going to fight Shadeja Green after that fight?
I don't promote Franchon. To ask her that. And by the way, she has to get there, right?
All right. Well, Lou, I don't want to take any more of your time, man. We do appreciate you. Thank you for coming on the show. It's been great.
Lou, before you go, just want your thoughts on yesterday's game. I saw you were tuned in, as was I.
Which one?
I mean, the one you called the best football game you've ever seen.
Oh, my God. I mean, was it technically the most perfectly played game? That wasn't the issue. Have you ever seen ebbs and flows of emotion and comebacks like that? And, inhuman performances by a guy that may have been the greatest of all time against a guy that may be the next greatest of all time? I mean, you really, you had Mbappe, this incredible young player who's only going to get better and only going to get bigger worldwide, and Messi, who I've thought for a long, long time is the GOAT. And to see those guys play at that level and see a game played with that level of emotion, that was the best advertisement for what most of the world calls football and what America calls soccer that I've ever seen. Like, and I know that my friend Dana White made some comments that were negative about soccer. Watch that fucking game, and if you can't appreciate that game, you don't get it, period.
Yeah, I was flipping the fuck out. Why I had money on France, but I covered on
I had money on
Mbappe.
Argentina. And by the way, I had money on Argentina, not a lot, but I had money on Argentina because I was with them and I wanted to bet on my rooting interest. I thought France was going to win because look, honestly, France was the better side in terms of talent, but and youth. But you know, you had two old guys, like the stuff that Messi and Di Maria did early in that game, and then the resilience of Argentina to see it through and win that game after it had to be deflating to be up like they were, and then have to be in a
Allow them to come
shootout
back.
situation.
Right, exactly.
Allowed them to come back. I mean, that was as great a soccer game as I've ever seen.
Lou, let me slide two fast ones here. I didn't ask this because I thought it was obvious, but they're asking who on your roster do fans need to be tuned into? I thought it was obvious with, Jalalov, Conwell, but anybody.
Conwell and Jalalov. And look, Conwell, part of the problem with Conwell is that Al's had such a hold, the PBC has, on the 54-pound division, but up to get Conwell in that PBC mix at 154. Even if it meant doing it, I mean, I could do a deal over there. But Conwell deserves to be in with the best because he's one of them. And Jalalov, I'll be very surprised if before he's through, Jalalov wasn't the heavyweight champion.
What do you mean before he's through? Before he's done with his career?
In 6 months. Yeah. I mean, he'll be heavyweight champion at some point in his career.
All right. Well, Lou, man,
by the way, here's another one. Everyone's willing to ordain Jared Anderson the best American heavyweight. And certainly he's one of them. And anybody who follows me on social media knows I love the guy as a fan. Like I've told them, I'm a big fan, particularly right now. I think his offense is as explosive as any heavyweight out there. I think he's got to work out a little bit. He's a young heavyweight in prospects. I think Shaw has not the same exact skill set in specific areas, but I think Shaw is of that same level of heavyweight. Don't sleep on Stefan Shaw. Stefan Shaw is one of the best young heavyweights in the world, and he's going to prove it in 2023. So, yes, Jalalov, yes, Conwell. I'm going to give you another one. Really pay attention to Stefan Shaw and what he can do. Another thing I want to see in 2023, I want to see some of my younger light heavyweights get an opportunity. And I want to see Hot Rod, who's not such a young light heavyweight, but whose only real loss was to Beterbiev, who really beat Marcus Brown. I want to see him get one of the division guys in 2023 because he deserves it.
His manager was at the convention. He got denied getting a better ranking because he's been inactive. He hadn't fought since the loss or something like that, right?
No, he's fought. But
the guy that he fought wasn't of that caliber.
Yeah, but if the other guys, and you know what? I get that. That's one of the great challenges of boxing. But if you're a legitimate contender who's with somebody who's not one of the exclusive platform promoters, they don't want to put their guys into a high-risk situation with someone they don't have. So you could sit there and say, I'll take fair wage. I'll put my guy in on your platform. Just pay me. They'd rather get a bum from, I don't want to say bum because anyone who gets in the ring and risks everything, that's not the right word. But if they want to get a no-hoper and just pull a guy off, they'd rather do that than create a competitive matchup with a fighter they don't have. So it becomes very difficult to make more competitive fights.
Follow up on that, fair wages. What's that mean to you? Define that, please.
It means the same kind of package you would pay to another fighter that maybe is within your stable. And by the way, if you want to take an option, which promoters do in our business, and particularly now where from fighter, I don't want to turn my fighter over to another promoter, but if a promoter If a fighter's on ESPN, I understand that ESPN, if that fighter wins in a good fight on their platform, wants to see that fighter again, I'm happy to make it for the next fight or the next two fights on that platform. The same would go for DAZN. The same would go for Showtime or Fox. That's only fair. But I shouldn't have to release a fighter. And there's one major promoter out there who I'm not going to name, who every promoter on earth knows, just picks up the phone, knowing that a fighter's and goes directly into the fighter's DMs or goes into the fighter's text messages and
Only one fighter,
to,
only one promoter does DMs. You speaking of Edward?
I'm not speaking of. I try not to speak of Edward. I'm not speaking of anybody. But the reality is this: it's that part of the way to do misfights happen, make it a little bit easier for that to happen, is to treat each other like intelligent businessmen and treat each other like human beings. If we try to create more, it's not only going to serve the interests of the sport in a bigger way, it's actually going to serve our economic interests too. Because a stronger sport inures to the benefit of everybody, right? But you don't get a stronger sport by trying to be your own UFC. Particularly where it's been proven in boxing, you fucking can't do it. You fucking can't do it. And maybe if DAZN would have had the attitude of not giving a king's ransom to Edward, but taking that king's ransom and trying to consolidate the industry, they would have had a lot more success.
Lou,
because
I don't want to let you go.
No one promoter is ever going to own or control boxing.
Yeah,
no
I'm
one
with
promoter.
You. I'm with you. My hope, and again, we all know I'm overly optimistic, but my hope is that DAZN gives all the promoters, dates because they have the broadband. They can do it.
Well, first of all, you have to care enough to do that, and you have to have staff dedicated to doing that, and you have to have a boxing department. And most of these people, the only what differentiated DAZN is DAZN was more dependent on boxing than ESPN or Fox or Showtime. Showtime's primarily is overall it's a service and a pay cable network, and they care about programming that people care about, not just sports, not just boxing. And Fox and ESPN, all these networks have a portfolio. In a lot of markets, boxing was the primary sport that DAZN was able to enter, and that's at stake. But an exclusive deal with one doesn't give you any to offer great programming. If you want to offer great programming, you need to be working with everybody.
Yeah.
And the problem right now is ESPN. You could argue that Bob will work with a lot of people. I have a great relationship with Top Rank. I could do a lot of things with them. But the reality is ESPN's not open to me. Fox is not open to me, other than on a Showbox 2 a year. Showtime's not. So, or frankly, anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And an entity or a programming service getting in and saying, I have a major budget, but I'm not doing a deal with any one promoter. I'm just buying product. So offer me the biggest and the best fights, and I'll put them on the air or I'll distribute them for you. That would be a great opportunity for someone to do that the right way. But that hasn't been done the right way in a long time.
Yeah, man, let's hope that we can get it done. But Lou, I know I said that was the last one, but I don't want to let you go without asking your thoughts on Terrence releasing information that he had an entity that would pay $25 million a piece. 25 for him, 25 for Earl.
I don't. But that's all bullshit, bro. Unless the money's, I could sit there and tell you I got an entity that'll pay me $100 million. If the money's not in the bank, I don't have shit. And if someone, if at the point at which Terrence or someone else has an entity that'll escrow $50 million, and then you could talk about it. But saying I'll pay this and that, there are carnival barkers all over the world, and there are carnival barkers all over entertainment, sports, and everything else. And people are full of shit. And what counts is money in the bank, not some promise of money in the bank. But
what's your thoughts on, again, he released information that Earl Al and
Show
Al
me.
were not interested in even knowing the parties. Al went as far as telling him, I'm not giving this fight to anybody.
I don't know. I wasn't there. And I also know that people react differently to big talk than they do to the posting of big dollar. And if someone said, Al, if someone posted $50 million with a major law firm, a major LA law firm, Al knows them all because he's done business with them all in either music or boxing. And that law firm called and said, I represent this entity and they're interested in making this fight. And I have $50 million in my escrow account to prove it. I promise you Al would talk to them. And I haven't talked to Al in over a year. But I still promise you I would talk to them.
Crawford says he went as far as telling Al, like, they know you. They, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, well, and maybe Al knows that they're full of shit.
All right, Lou, that's it. Because you know I can talk to you all day, man. So thank you for your time.
And look, you know that Al and I ain't breaking. Like, Al was one of my good friends for many, many years. I still like and care about Al.
Give me the story, Lou. Give me the story, because the streets say no. There is a story. The streets say that you guys fell out when you took Deontay Wilder over to Dazn. That you made that meeting without first talking to Al. So I guess that's where the loyalty or the whatever happened. But is that the case? Was it you just trying to work at getting Deontay the best possible deal for him?
Yeah, I thought it was me just trying to make the best possible deal. But I want to be honest. People, like, when you know somebody a long time, and Al and I have known each other for 25 plus years, and for most of those years we were very friendly, talked almost every day. Al's a micromanager. Al is a captain, and Al expects everyone to work. I'm not, like, I'm my own guy. It's not, we didn't fall out because it was anyone's fault, really. I mean, we could argue about what happened with Deontay or whatever, but that's in the rearview mirror. I put that past me. But that's not the only reason. The real reason is I'm not a worker bee. Like, I'm not a promoter for hire. And we worked for a long time, but sometimes guys can be good friends, and sometimes you can respect the fuck out of somebody, really can't work for them. You know what I mean? And that doesn't make them a bad guy, and it doesn't make you a bad guy. Just means you can't work for them. And that's why you're not going to hear me talking shit about Al, because that relationship worked for both of us from a business standpoint for as long as it did, and then it didn't. And that's probably as much to do with me as to do with him.
How many shows did you do in your time with Al from the opening of the Barclays Center? Because you seem to be the lead promoter for New York at that time.
I think I was for a number of years. I did a lot of shows with him.
You don't have a number?
And you know what? I don't have a number. I never counted them.
Only
but it was
reason
a lot,
I ask is because Marshall Kaufman said he did 36 shows. That's a lot. I
mean, whatever Marshall did, I did more. But it doesn't really matter how many you did. The reality was, like, look, at a time where I needed to, the stuff I was doing for him really served me and my company very well. And Brooklyn was my hometown, and I got to build something with him in Brooklyn, which was a lot of fun for those 5 years. And at some point, like, everything ends, man. And I got no bitterness or hate about that at all. And I got a lot of fond memories of working with PBC and Al, and I'll always have those.
Would you revisit? Would you pick up the phone?
I would. I have picked up the phone, and on occasion, if Al needed something I was doing, working with, or wanted to talk about something, he'd pick up the phone. I would. Of course I would. I pick up, but then again, look, if Eddie calls me and there's a piece, like, particularly with the women fighters, and Dazn has spent a lot of money in that area, and Eddie's done a lot in that area. If they call me with a fair offer, I'll do a deal with him too. I'll do a deal with anybody. So if it makes sense and creates opportunity for my fighter, I have to think that way when these promoters and people I've done business with in the past are so tied to platforms and outlets that if my fighter to make a fight that's on that platform or outlet, I have to have this attitude, right? So it's one that I'll carry with me until I'm out of boxing, that I'll work with anybody.
Just because you, again, have the knowledge from being in this sport so long, what can you tell us, I guess, your best guess of the trajectory of Jaron Ennis being a promoter that's in pretty much I would say you're in better shoes than Cameron Duncan because you've been doing it longer, but obviously you're not a major.
No, I'm a promoter. Cameron's not.
Well,
I'm a promoter.
he just became a
No,
promoter.
I'm a promoter. No, I'm a promoter.
Shots fired.
Cameron's not.
Okay.
No, it's not fire. It's just fact.
I mean,
You're not a promoter because you say you're a promoter. He was a great manager. He was a manager for a lot of years. He managed fighters. He still knows how to manage fighters. He doesn't put on boxing shows. So he's not a promoter.
Well,
but,
you know why he became a promoter,
look,
right?
It is what it is, dude. Most of the fights have been on PBC kind of fight cards, and Showtime has made Boots a Showtime fighter, which he deserves to be. Because if you ask me who are the best prospects in boxing, you cannot leave Boots Ennis out of that list. And I think right now he'd be a problem for Crawford or Spence. I'm not saying he'd beat both of them or either of them necessarily, but I wouldn't make him a no-hoper against either one. I don't think there's anybody in the world at his weight class that Boots Ennis wouldn't present a problem for right now. What's his trajectory with Showtime behind him? Honestly, it's also going to be a matter of the other sides of the fight, right? What are the biggest fights that could be made for him within that Showtime PBC universe? And there are some big fights. So, I think that, with
you think they're going to happen though, because he's not with PBC. Not with PBC, with PBC. I was particularly if I had Showtime as behind Boots as he is, and I was Cameron, I'd probably be trying to make a deal with PBC. Absolutely. Do you believe, with your knowledge again, that Crawford could land if he cannot, for whatever reason, get the Earl fight? Is a Jermell Charlo fight still a possibility, or a Jaron Boots Ennis, or are those off the table because it's like loyalty? You know.
No, it's not about loyalty, man. It's about money and expectations, and there's no way in the world that ever be a Boots Ennis fight economically if you can't make a Spence fight. And there's no way in the world there's going to be. What was the other one you mentioned?
Jermell Charlo, because Crawford's adamant about moving up.
No, I mean, if Crawford's adamant about moving up, then he makes a deal. Look, who has Charlo?
Al.
Okay. Who has Errol?
Al.
Good. Go make a deal.
So that's what I'm saying.
Or go hire somebody who really can brain and understands the business to make the best deal on your behalf.
Are you like that? Like, are you the type of guy that you'd be like, you know what, let me call Terrence. Terrence, let me negotiate this deal for you. Or are you just like, man, not my business, I stay out of it?
I mean, it ain't my business and I stay out of it. Frankly, he's a free agent right now. I know him. I respect him. I think he's one of the greatest fighters who's ever lived, who hasn't had the opportunity to show it yet. See, the unfortunate thing is Bud can say, I don't give a fuck, but he gives a fuck. Now, he's already a future Hall of Famer because he's that good, but he really has all-time great kind of talent. But you need to beat the Spences and the Charlos and move up in weight and do all those kind of things to prove it.
Do you think you still got enough juice to make that fight for him? If he gave you the authority?
It's not about, look, he could sit here and he said, well, look, Al wouldn't show me all the revenues and Al wouldn't let me be a true partner. I mean, no, it's not the way it works. But you know what you need? You need someone that can give you a good estimate of what it's going to perform. And then you need to get a guarantee based upon what it's likely that fight's actually going to perform, which really is not that hard to study and show.
Eddie Hearn seems to believe 400,000 is the most he'll guarantee that fight.
I'm not going to, I got to crunch the numbers and look at everything, but I don't think that that's that far off. I think that it's a sort of a 500,000 buy kind of fight, not $1 million buy kind of fight right now. I think it's a 500,000 buy, which by the way, makes it one of the bigger fights that you can make in our sport. But that limits what the total revenue would be. And you could pretty much guesstimate what the gate's going to be by comparing it to similar kind of product. And when you put the money together, it's not that hard to figure out what the two fighters should be guaranteed, understanding that nobody should be losing money to pay them. Doesn't mean anybody should be making as much as the fighters or more than the fighters, but people who work are entitled to get paid. And the fighters should make the majority of the money, but not more money than is available. And, if I was representing, I haven't invested money in Terrence's career or spent a lot of money on him. If he came to me and he said, Lou, help me negotiate the fight, I would do that for him at a number of percentage points, not a lot, because it's more getting paid for your services. But he needs, I'm not saying it has to be me, but he needs somebody that understands that world, pay-per-view, sites, economics, what does it cost to put on the event? I mean, no one's opening their books to Bomac and Terrence Crawford.
Why? Why not, Lou? The way you said it is just, I'm sorry.
But Lou, we appreciate.
To be honest with you, they have a hard enough time opening their books to another promoter. I mean, right now, do you think anyone? I don't know what Aram's arrangements are with ESPN under an exclusive deal, or Eddie's with DAZN, or Al's with Viacom or Fox. So, am I ever going to get true reporting if I do a deal with Eddie? No, but I'm going to do a deal where I'm going to think I negotiate something that I think is smart, based upon what I think revenue streams will be, based upon intelligent, educated estimates and guarantees that reflect risk and reward. And I know the business for 33 motherfucking years. And I'm a Harvard-educated lawyer. I know how people steal from other people, and I'm not going to let them steal from me or my fighter. So I can protect my flank. But to think that a fighter or a manager or trainer is going to get an open book from a platform behind the promoter is absurd.
Well,
not happening. It's not happening.
Hopefully, we just had Terrence here, and I know Bomac loves to listen. Hopefully they can hear it and understand that this is, good advice and bring you in, man, because you said something on this interview. Let me just say, you said on this interview, that's one of the fights that you want the most. So maybe you can be a part in getting it done.
It's a fight that, as fans, we deserve to see. Like, I think for a long time, those who know that those are the two welterweights that stand a bit above everybody else. It's a shame when that kind of fight doesn't happen. I'll always look at, like, my career, and one of the little things in the background that'll always bother me is that when I was at HBO, I never got to make Bo and Lewis. And that when I was working with PBC,
oh wow, that was under your time.
Yeah, back that was under my time, and also that we never saw undefeated AJ against undefeated Deontay, which would have been the best fight in that division.
Damn, Lou, that's crazy. How are you historically responsible for both? Fucking.
Oh, I'm not historically responsible for both not happening, but I was there for both not happening.
I mean, you're the promoter in both fights.
No, I wasn't. Back when Bo and Lewis were fighting,
Oh, the executive.
Right,
okay.
Right. I signed Lewis to his HBO contract. I signed Bo to his HBO. And I tried for years to make that fight happen. And for numerous times I thought it was done. And then for one reason or the other, it didn't happen.
It's crazy because I called AJ Wilder the new Bo Lewis, and Eddie got so mad he jumped on the show for that. And look, it is, though. We're never getting that, man.
Well, look, you might get it. I mean, look, I'd still like to see it now because it would still be, in my mind, the most interesting fight. I mean, AJ ain't beating Fury if Fury's right. He's not beating him. And we already know that AJ can't beat Usyk. And what was the fight that most people wanted to see from the beginning? The one that didn't happen. AJ and Deontay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, look, it's a shame. We shoot ourselves in the foot too often. Could you imagine if there was never a Super Bowl? You played a whole NFL season and you never saw the fucking Super Bowl?
Because we don't have any structure. We need that from other sports. They have structure.
Well, thank you. Haven't I been saying that to you for the last fucking 10 years? And on that note, I'm finally getting off the fucking phone.
All right.
Merry Christmas,
we
everybody.
We appreciate you, Lou.
Happy holidays,
Happy
Lou.
New Year.
Likewise.
Everybody out there listening, everybody supports boxing. have a great New Year and have a happy, healthy holiday season with
Send,
the family.
send
Lou.
your
Thank you.
mother our love.
Exactly.
Send your mother
I
our
will
love.
do that. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
All
We
right.
appreciate
God
you.
bless.
Yeah.
There
Happy
you have it,
holidays.
ladies and gentlemen. Lou Dibella. Let's hope that Terrence and Bomac heard this and say, you know what? Fuck it, man. Let's give Lou a shot because
Let's go,
listen,
Lou.
it's a percentage for hire, right? What do you care who could get it done? You know, what do you care who could get it done? If Lou feels, listen, I got Al's ear, we've done business, I can get it done. Let him get it done. If you love this interview, you know what to do. Get it done yourself. Go ahead and share it. Put this on your Facebook, on your Instagram. Let people know we had a fantastic interview with Lou Dibella. We appreciate everybody that tuned in. I am your host, Nestor Gibbs. Find me on Instagram and Twitter at NestGTO.
Ringwalk Denny. We are the boxing voice on all forms of social media and wherever podcasts can be found. Catch us on the next one tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern. Peace.
Arrivederci. What up, YouTube family? Don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Help us get to that 1 million subscribers. We're on the road to 1 million. And obviously, we have other great content on our Patreon channel. So since this video is over, head on over to our Patreon and check out all the exclusive content or right here on our YouTube members.